Welcome back, everybody. Okay, so no more students from home. Probably the exam is coming, or maybe they are sleeping. It doesn't care. And so today exercise is impairment test IAS 36. Let's go on. The first one is the following. In January year 1, Bilbao acquired an office block renting for 2.5 million. The building is depreciated straight line method over 25 years and on 31st December year 5 appears at its net book value on the balance sheet of Bilbao. On the same date, the accountant realizes that the price of office properties has fallen tremendously over the past year, and it has the following information. The estimated selling price of the building on 31st December year 5 would be 1.8 million. The annual rent received by Bilbao is 200,000. The discount rate applied is 10%, and then the residual value of the building in December year 25 is considered 0. A lot of questions for today. What valuation method could Bilbao choose after the purchase of the property on 31st December year 1? What do you advise Bilbao's company's accountant to do? What value will appear for the building on the Bilbao balance sheet on 31st December year 5? What entries should be made on 31st December year 5? And the last one is, what will be the book value of the building on the balance sheet on 31st December year 6? First one is valuation methods according to IAS 40, because in the text of the exercise there were written Bilbao acquired an office block for renting. That's the reason we have to apply IAS 40. And so according to IAS 40, the company can choose two different valuation methods. The first one is the cost model, which is very similar to the standard IAS 16, while on the opposite side the company can decide to apply the fair value model, which relies on the fair value at the end of the reporting period. But since we do not have the fair value at the end of the reporting period, that's the reason why we have to apply the cost model. Indeed, we consider that the cost model has been chosen to reduce volatility in the income statement of Bilbao and to avoid the cost of annual fair value measurement. What do you advise Bilbao's company accountant to do? So since there is a drop in the office property prices, that's the reason why at the end of the reporting period you should perform the impairment test, because the drop in the office property prices is an indicator of impairment loss. And then you should know when the net carrying amount is higher than the recoverable amount, it is necessary to account for an impairment loss. I remind you, the recoverable amount is the highest between the fair value minus the cost of disposal and the value in use. The value in use is the final amount of the future cash flows that the company will get or will expense for the useful life of the asset. Value use discounted value of future cash flows. First, double entry record. on 1st January year one, the company purchased this investment. And as always, we have to account for debit side investment property IAS 40 asset, while on the other side, an outflow of cash investing activity in the cash flow statement. And again, since this is an asset, you have to identify also the depreciation for the exercise. So depreciation for year one is equal to historical cost, namely 2.5 million out of its useful life, 25 years. And then first depreciation charge for the first year, 100,000, debit side, and then accumulated depreciation, same amount. And let's go on for the second, the third, the fourth, and then probably the fifth year when there is a signal of decreasing in the value of the investment. That's the reason why for this exercise, depreciation, debit side, and in order to hold the equation, accumulated depreciation, 100,000. Here you find again the difference between a T account of the income statement, namely depreciation, and T account of the balance sheet, accumulated depreciation. Please consider that you have to compute also the amount of the depreciation for the year 5. But please, you have to compute depreciation always before the impairment test. Always, depreciation always before performing the impairment test. And so, again, for this year, for this current year, the company has to recognize again depreciation for 100,000 and then accumulated depreciation for the same amount. Next step. Updated the account. Depreciation for the current year 100,000. The updated accumulated depreciation, first, second, and so on depreciation charges. And then the historical cost of the investment property. Well, you should know at the end of the reporting period, year 5, the net carrying amount is equal to investment property minus the accumulated depreciation, namely 2 million. This is at the cap of the impairment test. If the recoverable amount is higher than its carrying amount, you don't have to account for a loss. Otherwise, it is necessary to account for the impairment loss if the recoverable amount is lower than the carrying amount. Again, recoverable amount is the highest value between fair value minus cost of disposal and value in use. First of all, we have to compute the amount of the value in use. We know that the annual rent received is equal to 200,000 for the remaining useful life, namely 20 years. And that's the reason if you compute this formula, so you get the value in use which is equal to 1.7 million. But after that, probably you can better understand here. Remaining useful life is 20 years. Annual rent received is equal to 200,000. So if you compute for each cash flow the present value, you get for the first year present value equal to 181,000 and so on for 20 years. The sum of the last column is equal to the value in use, 1.7 million. Please consider that you have to compute this amount just for the remaining useful life, 20 years, and not for 25 years, the overall useful life. Any questions so far? Okay, we have just identified the value in use, 1.7 million. But we know the fair value minus cost of disposal is equal to 1.8 million. We have to compare these two values and the carrying amount. But since the recoverable amount, namely the highest between fair value and value in use, is lower than the net carrying amount at 31st December year 5, we have to account, obviously, we have to perform impairment test, and then we will find an impairment loss. But obviously, we have to take into account the highest value, namely the fair values minus cost of disposal. And then if we compare the net carrying amount and the fair value minus cost of disposal, we get a loss of 200,000. Maybe it is shown here. Yes, because what value will appear for building on Bilbao balance sheet on 31st December year 5? Very easy, obviously it will be the amount of the fair value minus cost of disposal, which is equal to 1.8 million. Balance sheet asset side IAS 40. And what entries should be made on 31st December year 5? Since the net carrying amount was 2 million, while the recoverable amount was 1.8 million, you have to account for an impairment loss of 200,000. Impairment loss debit side 200,000, and then in order to hold the equation again, credit side the same amount, accumulated impairment loss. Accumulated impairment loss works like accumulated depreciation. These procedures are very similar. Balance sheet, income statement, and cash flow statement for year 5. Investment property will be the fair value of such asset, 1.8 million. Namely, the net carrying amount 2 million minus the impairment loss of the year. While the income statement will be affected by, first of all, the depreciation for 100,000. And then the impairment loss for 200,000. Depreciation and impairment loss are always recognized in income statement. And moreover, obviously, another gain, the rental income for 200,000. No outflows or inflows for year 5. Any questions? What will be the book value of the building on the balance sheet on 31st December year 6? Since the net carrying amount is different than the previous one without considering the impairment loss, so the new net carrying amount has to be depreciated according to the useful life. But the new net carrying amount is equal to 1.8 million out of 20 years. You get the new depreciation charge, the new annual depreciation charge, 90,000. Depreciation debit side 90,000, accumulated depreciation credit side 90,000. You get the new value that will appear on the balance sheet at 31st December year 6, which is the net carrying amount at the end of the 5th year minus the new depreciation charge, and then you get 1.71 million. Depreciation 90,000, and then again rental income 200,000. Another time, no outflows or inflows for year 6. Questions? It seems to be okay. I hope so. And then let's switch to the second one for today. In January year 1, the company XYZ acquired the following machinery. Historical cost 1.2 million, residual value 0, useful life 10 years, and depreciation straight line method. On December 31st, year 5, the company XYZ identifies the presence of damages happened at the items. And then the accountant has the following information. Again, fair value 380,000 and value in use 500,000. December year 8, there is an indication that an impairment loss recognized in prior periods for this machinery may no longer exist or may have decreased. And then there are two scenarios. The first one, the accountant has the following information. For the first one, at year 8, the fair value will be 120,000, while the value in use is 240,000. Second scenario, fair value 120,000 and value in use 250,000. Again, show impacts of these incurred events on financial statement for period year 1 until year 10. Again, starting point. So the amount, the historical cost of the machinery was 1.2 billion. And then, obviously, you have to get the net carrying amount at the end of the year 5 in order to perform the impairment test. Again, the annual depreciation charge is equal to 1.2 million. Historical cost out of 10 years. And then you get the depreciation charge for 120,000. You have to repeat this procedure for year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, and year 5. And then you get the net carrying amount on 31st December year 5, which is 600,000, as we did before. Again, impairment test, year 5, fair value minus cost of disposal 380,000, value in use 500,000. You have to consider the highest between these two values, and then obviously value in use 500,000. If you compare the net carrying amount at 31st December year 5 and its value in use, 500,000, you get the impairment loss, 100,000. Journal entries. Debit side depreciation for year 5, and then credit side accumulated depreciation for the same amount. And let's go on. Again, impairment loss, debit side, again it is recognized in the income statement as an expense, 100,000, and then credit side, 100,000 accumulated impairment loss. balance sheet, income statement, and cash flow statement for year 5. Net carrying amount of the machinery is equal to the fair value at the end of the reporting period, after depreciation charges and after impairment loss, 500,000. While income statement you have to account for depreciation charge 120,000 and impairment loss 100,000. Again, for this scenario, no outflows or inflows for year 5. Again, same procedure as we did before. Due to impairment loss, we have to compute again the depreciation. Depreciation will be the net carrying amount on 31st December year 5, namely 500,000. It was equal to the fair value when performing impairment test. And then the remaining useful life is 5 years. 500,000 out of 5 years, you get the new depreciation charge for 100,000. You have to repeat it for year 6, year 7, and year 8. Again, debit side depreciation 100,000, and then credit side accumulated depreciation 100,000. You can see here the summary of the accumulated depreciation. First depreciation charge, which was equal to 120,000, and then from year 6, the new depreciation charge equal to 100,000. Moreover, you have to consider also the accumulated impairment loss, and then the difference between the historical cost 1.2 million minus the accumulated depreciation and minus the accumulated impairment loss, you get the net carrying amount at 31st December year 8, which is 200,000. Is it clear? Questions from home? First scenario. 31st December year 8, there is an indication that an impairment loss recognized in prior periods for the machinery may no longer exist or may have decreased. In other words, this is the reversal of the impairment loss. But again, we have to compare value in use and fair value minus cost of disposal. 120,000 as fair value and 240,000 value in use. But please consider this information. For each asset, the reversal cannot exceed the carrying amount which could be determined without impairment loss. It seems to be really tough, but now we are going to see how to solve that. I repeat again, for each asset, the reversal mustn't exceed the carrying amount which could be determined without impairment loss. Again, we have to consider the highest value, 240,000 value used, and then let's go. Please consider this table. First column, carrying amount without impairment loss. Historical cost 1.2 million minus first depreciation charge, it was 120,000, and so on for the overall useful life. At the end of the 31st December year 10, we will get the final amount, the final net carrying amount, which is equal to 0. But at the end of the reporting period number 5, there are some indication that the net carrying of the value of the investment is inferior than its real value, and that's the reason why you have to account for an impairment loss. Again, for year 5, for year 1, 1.2 million minus the first depreciation charge, and let's go on until year 4. Again, you have to identify first, always depreciation before impairment test 120,000 minus the impairment loss that you have just computed before 100,000. You get the net carrying amount 500,000, and let's go on with the new depreciation charge, which is equal to 500,000 out of 5 years, and then you get 400,000 and so on until the last day of the useful life, 0. But since during year 8 there are indications that the impairment loss may no longer exist, so again you have to repeat the same procedure until year 7. Starting from again year 1, 1.2 million minus depreciation charge for year 1, year 2, year 3, and so on. At the end of the 5th reporting period, you get the net carrying amount, which is equal to 500,000. Name the difference between net carrying amount at 31st December year 4 minus depreciation charge minus impairment loss. And let's go on with the new depreciation charge, 100,000, until year 8. This amount, 240,000, which is computed when considering the net carrying amount at the 31st December year 7 minus the depreciation charge for the current year, plus the reversal that now we're going to see how to compute that. You have to consider that this amount cannot exceed the amount that you identified without considering impairment loss, 240 and 240. I consider the 240 because it is the highest between these two values, 240. And the net carrying amount after the reversal cannot exceed the amount that you computed before without considering carrying amount, without considering impairment loss. Questions about it? Reversal of impairment test. First of all, you have to reduce the accumulated impairment loss for 40,000, debit side, and then we have to recognize a revenue again in the income statement, credit side, 40,000. Reversal of impairment test on 31st December year 8. Balance sheet, income statement and cash flow statement for year 8, first scenario. Machinery, namely the recoverable amount at the 31st December year 8, 240,000. Depreciation for year 8, 100,000, and then the reversal of impairment test, 40,000. I repeat again, depreciation, impairment loss, and reversal of impairment loss are always recognized in the income statement as costs or otherwise revenue gain. Reversal of impairment loss, 40,000. And then again, no outflows or inflows for year 8. Second scenario, again, on 31st December year 8, there is an indication that an impairment loss recognized in prior periods for the machinery may no longer exist or may have decreased. Again, you have to compare. In order to get recoverable amount, fair value minus cost of disposal 120,000 and value in use 250,000. It is different. Again, I repeat it again, for each asset the reversal cannot exceed the carrying amount which would be determined without impairment loss. Again, you have to consider the IS between these two values. Value is 250,000. But if you look at the slide, again, the reversal is equal to 40,000 because, again, you mustn't exceed the amount 240 for the first column, namely carrying amount without impairment loss. Otherwise, it would be a way in order to overestimate the value of the asset. That's the reason why this is the highest value that you can recognize in the balance sheet after the reversal. Is it quite clear? And so again, first column carrying amount without impairment loss, second column carrying amount with impairment loss, and then last column carrying amount with reversal of impairment loss. Again, the reversal of impairment loss is equal to 40,000 for the reason that we have just said. And then, again, credit side reversal of impairment loss, 40,000 income statement gain. And then, in order to hold the equation, same amount accumulated impairment loss. Balance sheet, income statement, and cash flow statement for year 8. Second scenario, machinery, 240,000, namely the value in use or the fair value, namely the recoverable amount at 31st December year 8 after the reversal, and then depreciation 100,000 and reversal of impairment loss 40,000. No outflows or inflows for year 8. Questions? Okay, Alessandro, the remaining part, the amount of 60, you don't have to close the T account, otherwise you cannot identify the net carrying amount because it is like the accumulated depreciation. You have to consider them for the remaining useful life in order to compute the final amount of the machinery. You have just to reduce the accumulated impairment loss for reversal, and then 60 will remain until the last day of the useful life. Alessandro, is it clear? Okay. Now this is for you. Now it's up to you. You have to do it now. 15 minutes in order to identify, in order to draw up a financial statement for year 8. But please, before we can read it together. At 31st December year 8, again, there is an indication that an impairment loss recognized in prior periods for this machinery may no longer exist or may have decreased. And then the following information are fair value 120,000 and value in use 230,000. Take note of these two values. Again, the objective of this exercise is to show the impact of these incurred events on financial statement for period year 1 until year 10. 10 or 15 minutes in order to do this exercise.
Can you please go back to the carrying amount last year?
Net which amount?
Yeah.
This one? Value used 230,000 while fair value 120,000 for the third scenario.
Did you find the value?
But I forget that
So you follow here.
because I can't. If I wear this, my eyes is uncomfortable.
Yes,
so.
you're right.
And I wanna ask. I forget this part because it's previous.
Balance sheet, which
From
one?
year 1 to year 5, I forget the first impairment loss. How much is that? So
Okay. Then I'll upload the slides and then you can check it.
I mean, you said we have.
There are a lot of numbers and then I'm confused. Sì, oppure quando hanno fatto il caso sul 16, quando cambia la stima della vita del cliente, quando avevamo fatto la seconda volta l'esercizio, che cambia tutta la vita di
prima l'ammortamento, poi il permanent loss e anche il primo ammortamento poi il revello. Quindi l'ammortamento non considera mai il permanent
Answers from home, which is the value of the reversal for this scenario?
Can we check it?
Do you agree with Alessandro and Gloria and Isaac answers? I don't know. let's check it together. Question showed impact of blah blah blah. At 31st December year 8, there is an indication again that an impairment loss recognized in prior periods for the machinery may no longer exist or may have decreased. Again, fair value minus cost of disposal 120,000 and then value used 230,000. Again, I repeat, for each asset the reversal cannot exceed the carrying amount which would be determined without impairment loss. You have to consider 230 because it's higher than the fair value minus cost of disposal. And then, so again, the same table. First column, carrying amount without impairment loss. The highest values that you mustn't exceed is equal to 240 at the 31st December year 8. Second column, carrying amount with impairment loss. And then the last one, carrying amount with the reversal. The amount of the reversal for this scenario will be 30,000 because the value used was 230, and you mustn't overestimate the value of the asset, so you cannot bring it until 240,000. And that's the reason why if you consider just the last column, carrying amount with reversal, historical cost 1.2 million minus depreciation charges until year 5, plus impairment loss 100,000, minus the new depreciation charge, and then at the 31st December year 8, you have to account for depreciation charge for the current year and then the reversal, which is equal to 30,000. And obviously, for year 9 and year 10, you have to compute the new depreciation charge. Is it clear? $240, but the highest value is 230,000. Reversal of impairment test. Credit side, 30,000. Reversal of impairment loss, income statement, revenue. And then debit side, accumulated impairment loss, 30,000. Balance sheet, income statement and cash flow statement for year 8. Machinery, you will find the fair value, the value used 230, namely the recoverable amount at the 31st December year 8. And then obviously again, depreciation, you have to compute depreciation always before the reversal and impairment loss. Depreciation for 100,000 and then reversal of impairment loss for 30,000. Again, no outflows or inflows for year 8. Questions? Another exercise is a surprise for you. So this is the same exercise that we did as the first one of today. Again, January 1, Bilbao acquired an office block for renting 2.5 million. Again, the useful life is 25 years on 31st December year 5. And it has accounted for an investment property IAS 40, but for this case, the subsequent measure is according to fair value model, null cost model, for this time fair value model. And again, the accountant realizes that the price of office properties has been changing over the past years, and he has the following information. Again, the annual rent received by Bilbao is 200,000. The discount rate applied is 10%. The residual value of the building in December year 25 is considered 0. But please pay attention, this is the table of the fair value of the asset for each year. Year 1, 2.6 million. Year 2, 2.35 million. Year 3, 2.3 million, and so on until 31st December, year 5. 15 minutes in order to draw up financial statement for year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, and then year 5. Good luck. Obviously, there are some unuseful information in the exercise that you don't have to consider. I repeat again, you have to draw up financial statement from year 1 until year 5. But you have to apply the fair value model IAS for the investment property. This is a tip for you. You have to start from this point. I can back.
Solo l'ultima tabella. How is it going? Hopeless. How is it going?
It's good, but I need a discount. I don't have
No, no discount.
no discount really.
No discount. Just the last table.
Only table. Okay, I think I
Decrease or increase of fair value in the income statement.
so
No discount value. How's it going?
Great.
Ten minutes left. We're waiting for the answers, at least for year one and year two.
finished. Is that correct?
First year, 2.5. Impairment loss.
This is
Yeah, you have to adjust the value 2.5 million according to 2.6 million for year one, and then you have to account for an increase in fair value in the income statement equal to the difference between 2.5 and 2.6. No depreciation because fair value model.
I have it.
L'anno successivo si passa al 2007, 2050 e si passa al 40, c'è la cattedrale si balza sul tatuaggio.
What is the value of the investment property that will appear in the balance sheet at 31st year 1? Ideas from home? Let's check it together. Show the impact of these incurred events on financial statements. First of all, starting point, 1st January year 1, investment property and cash, investment property debit side, credit side, outflow of cash, investing activity, cash flow statement. According to IAS 40, an entity can decide to apply cost model. We saw it before, the initial cost is kept accumulated depreciation, impairment test if indication of impairment, IAS 36, and then obviously you have to compare it to IAS 16, while on the opposite side, fair value model is measured at its fair value at the end of the reporting period, and then it will be affected by decrease and increase in fair value that are shown in profit and loss statement. And then please pay attention, you don't have to compute depreciation according to IAS 40 fair value model. 31st December year 1. First of all, no depreciation. You have to adjust the value of the investment property according to its fair value. And how to do that? First of all, you have to recognize an increase in investment property for 100,000 debit side, and then in order to hold the equation, the same amount increase in fair value credit side 100,000. Namely the difference between historical cost 2.5 million and the fair value at 31st December year 1 2.6 million. Is it clear?
But the increase in fair value is revenue.
Increase in fair value is revenue, and it affects just the income statement, while investment property balance sheet. Balance sheet, income statement, and cash flow statement for year 1. Investment property 2.6 million, namely the fair value at the same date. And moreover, income statement for year 1, first of all, again rental income 200,000, and then increase in fair value 100,000. Cash flow statement, investing activity, the purchase of the investment property, outflow for 2.5 million. Any questions?
Doesn't the rental income goes into the operating activities?
Yes, you're right. The focus of the exercise was on investment property. You're right. If you recognize as an inflow from rental income, it's right. Can I go ahead? Second year. The fair value, probably it was 2.35 million, and then obviously again you have to adjust at the end of the reporting period the value that will appear in the balance sheet. In order to decrease it, you have to account for 250,000 credit side balance sheet investment property, and then in order to hold the equation at the same amount, debit side decrease in fair value. Namely, 250,000 is equal to the difference between the amount of investment property at 31st December year 1 and the new fair value at 31st December year 2. 2.6 million minus 2.35 million. And again, balance sheet, income statement, and cash flow statement for second year. Investment property, namely the fair value at the 31st December year 2, 2.35 million. And then again, rental income for 200,000 and decrease in fair value. This is a cost that has to recognize in the income statement to 250,000. December year 3, another adjustment, and then you have to increase the value of the investment property for 50,000 credit side, and then debit side a decrease in fair value for 50,000. Balance sheet, income statement, and cash flow statement for year 3. Again, the balance sheet will be affected by the fair value of the investment property, 2.3 million. And then again, in the income statement, you have to account for rental income, 200,000, and then decrease in fair value for 50,000. No outflows or inflows for year 3. Again, 31st December year 4. Decrease in investment property for 200,000, credit side, and then decrease in fair value, debit side, 200,000. Balance sheet, income statement, and cash flow statement for year 4. Balance sheet, investment property, again, fair value of investment property at 31st December year 4, 2.1 million. And again, rental income, 200,000, and decrease in fair value, namely a cost in the income statement, 200,000. No outflows or inflows for year 3. Any questions? Last year, 31st December year 5. Investment property, again a decrease for 300,000 credit side. And then in order to hold the equation, debit side, decrease in fair value. Last balance sheet, last income statement, and last cash flow statement. Investment property, 1.8 million. And then again, rental income, 200,000, and decrease in fair value for 300,000. Moreover, no outflows or inflows for year 5. If we receive the payment of 200,000 grand, should we recognize in the inflow in investing activity? Yes, you're right, Gloria, investing activity. Now we can start just with one exercise on revenue. Just one exercise for revenue. IFRS 15. Don't care about business combination. We can read it together. Company B is an airline company. During year one, company B has collected 10 million euros due to ticket sales. However, at the end of December year one, 10% of tickets issued have not generated flights yet. These flights are expected to take place in the period January-March year two. Questions: draw up B's financial statement for year one and year two. Probably you should know that according IFRS 15, in order to recognize revenue, you have to follow 5 steps. We can read them together. Revenue from contract with customers must be recognized following the 5-step model. First one, identification of the contract, namely the sale of the ticket. Second one, identification of performance obligations, namely performance obligation consists of providing service of flights. Determination of transaction price, it is the amount collected, namely 10 million. This exercise is easy because there's just one performance obligation, and then you don't have to allocate the transaction price to performance obligation. There's just the sale of the ticket. Last step, recognition when the performance obligation is satisfied. And then for this exercise, the airline companies fulfills the performance obligation only when the flights take place. That's the reason why the amount of the revenue at the end of the reporting period won't be 10 million, because only consideration collected for flights will be accounted for in the income statement, while the other part is deferred. Namely, it is a liability that will appear in the balance sheet of the entity. It will be a liability until the flights take place, namely when the revenue will be certain. How to get it? This is a tip for you. 10% of issued tickets, namely, this was this estimate. 10% of tickets issued have not generated flights yet. If you apply 10% to the whole amount of the revenue, 10 million, you get this 1 million. And it would be recognized as liability in the balance sheet. But now probably you are able to do it now. I gave you some tips in order to draw up financial statement for year one. So 5 or 10 minutes in order to do it. Please consider that this information, the other part that didn't take place, it will be a liability, and then the remaining part will be accounted for in the income statement as revenue. Namely, you have to decrease the amount of the revenue, and then you have to account for something else.
Because cash is what actually you do. But liability.
Exercises of revenue are available on Moodle.
Yeah, so I think I'm saying it is six, right? Liability is all. Because it's like over the page.
Yes, my
Yeah, then
yes, 10 million. Income statement, we have the revenue, we have the cash flow.
The revenue sheet, so actually it's two parts, because 10% we didn't.
That,
But now it's,
why liability for 10 million? Liability just for the 10%. What?
we're at one more,
how many years?
video, is it okay?
one more.
Because I have something when I was playing the phones. You can just skip it. Yeah, you can just skip that part.
That 10%. Yeah, we consider that 1 million as a revenue.
No, you have to know that next year. Yeah, I think this is yes.
Let's
Because
check it
that-
together.
Yeah,
I repeat, only consideration collected for flights that have taken place before the end of the reporting period are recognized in the income statement. The other part is deferred through liability until the flights take place. You have just computed the 10% of the issued ticket, namely 10% multiplied by 10 million. The amount is equal to 1 million. How to draw up financial statement? First of all, the company collects 10 million debit side inflow operating activity. And then, in order to hold the equation, the company has to recognize an amount of 10 million credit side revenue income statement. But according to IFRS 15 and according to what I've just said, so you have to account for a liability for 1 million as a deferred revenue, as a deferred liability, namely the 10% of 10 million. And then obviously you have to reduce the amount of the revenue for the same amount. Any questions? Is it clear?
It's wrong to put it all together, so 10 millions, 9 millions, and 1.
Yes, you can put all together. Balance sheet at 31st December year 1, income statement and cash flow statement. You will find just the liability for 1 million. balance sheet liability side. And then the income statement will be affected by revenue for 10 million minus 1, namely 9 million. But let's go on, the cash flow statement, the operating activity will be affected by 10 million. Any questions? We will see the second year.
Just one.
Yes.
Okay.
We will see the second year during the next lecture. For today, that's all, and I'm here available for your question, or otherwise see next week. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Give me 20 seconds.
You asking a lot of questions.
I have a lot don't understand.
So actually this time, like this balance sheet, he only read liability because maybe because the things change and it's only liability. So the part of cash we don't need to read.
But you have to write. Because I
think
asked
so,
him,
because-
I asked him, like last time I asked him, what about the cash and this thing
The
and
other
cash
things,
flow?
yes.
And he said it's not important in the case, but if you want to be more precise, you should write it. So I asked him in the exam, if I didn't write it, is it wrong? Like he said no. But I think we should.
Maybe I think it's because the start we have balance sheet at 1 January and year 1.
Yeah.
This one is the balance sheet as 31 December. So actually maybe they only interested in the change number, change things.
Yeah.
So like this one, the cash is no more change. So maybe we don't need to write
Yeah.
more times.
It's
Maybe.
only the date. Yeah.
Yes.
But I think in the
But maybe for
real-
us it's better to write all the things.
Yeah, because in consolidated statement in normal companies, I think everything is included.
Yes,
Nothing
and
is
actually
like-
for me, if we don't write all the things, the
It's
balance,
confusing.
yes, because it's not a balance
Yeah.
at the asset part and the liability part.
Yeah.
But I have one question. Because on balance sheet, they sold it. Okay, on year one.
Yeah.
But 10% of tickets are happening after the
The
next
year
year.
two,
The
yes.
year two. Okay.
Yes.
But in balance sheet, he just wrote the liabilities.
Yes, because the liability is actually the part, the 10%, the part.
That will
Yes.
happen next year.
Yes.
Now they are obligated to do it next year.
Yes, because the first year we finished, so
But what about
the
if the balance sheet of the first year happening at the end of the year?
No, next year will happen the library.
Yes.
yes. So actually the 19% is not finished, so we only need to consider the 10%. So that's all. Because the 19% is all finished, they buy the ticket and
So when
departed,
it's
so
right
we
in the
it's
past,
not
there is cost of disposal.
Oh.
Disposal, we have to
Because they
calculate
consider
it. If otherwise, it's
yes.
You're right.
Yeah.
yeah. I think I have a lot don't understand.
Actually, for them it's very easy to collect the things, but for us it's actually
That's new.
more how to say that, more things for us to
there's-
think about.
Yeah.
So what about the year two?
I think
The year 2,
two.
the liability is 0 because it's already finished, and we in the revenue we can write the
No,
liability.
no, it's already written now. So it's only if liability didn't happen, we should cut from the revenue.
But the liability is zero, but
Yeah.
the revenue is three, and like in the income
Did you got know
statement.
the revenue of the year? Only,
Only that part.
The revenue is already all now. It's 1 million.
the revenue is
It's
1
all
million.
for all, also liability. So next year the revenue didn't change if disposal, liability happens.
But this time is the deferred income, and the next year, the year two, actually is become the real income.
But I think he counted now for the real income already.
But that
Because
one
he
is the
wrote it-
19. It's
No,
not
no,
only.
it's 1 million.
Yeah.
It's all. It's whole.
Okay.
Are you okay?
For the year 2, the quarter 1 of the year 2, if we want to
2 minutes.
just calculate the this one. Okay, yes. Our revenue is 1 million. And our now